Evening, everyone. My name is Charles Greenwald. This is actually my last assignment in my master's degree. This is for managerial accounting at Southern Utah University. This is a very exciting moment for me. But anyway, so the presentation I decided to do today is out of the Strategic Finance magazine, Human Capital. Now, I was pulling this together. My thoughts as far as human capital and the importance of, employees and those in these largely successful companies. I was thinking of Jeff Bezos, Bill Gates, and Steve Jobs. These were the titans of industry in the tech world that have pretty much built what we have today. And as you can see here, it's my little buddy Kilo. He's going to be joining us in this presentation. Anyway, now if you throw in Alphabet, or the parent company of Google, all four of these companies have a collective market share of over $4 trillion. That is very impressive. And so this begs the question, would these incredibly successful companies be where they are today if it wasn't for these key individuals that I mentioned? And going along with that, what about the tens of thousands of employees that have been hired by these companies, and they continue to hire, that drive these institutions forward and are very forward-thinking? Now, with that said, just moving on. Now, last year, the SEC published a proposal to make changes to Regulation S-K, namely items 101, 103, and 105. The purpose of this proposal is to provide investors with greater insight into how corporations manage their human capital. Now, under the current regulation, those registered with the SEC are only required to disclose the number of employees. The changes that were proposed in this draft from the SEC would require registrants to additionally describe their human capital resources and how management measures and drives this resource forward in their, respective institutions. Here on the next slide, this next slide you'll see a list of additional resources, a list of additional disclosures that would be required if this proposal were to be drafted forward. A few just to mention, to make note of, that it would further expand on not just the number of employees mentioned, but also the types of employees, such as full-time, part-time, seasonal, etc. It also show the number of average training hours per employee per year, also turnover rates, and also any corporate initiatives on retention, development, and attraction of personnel. So showing how the company focuses on attracting the best talent. So a big, issue you could say with this proposal, a lot of people had trouble with is this feasible? Now, currently, a lot of different companies in different industries, almost a countless amount, use varying different models and methods to understand the value of their workforce. Now, unlike financial metrics, companies and investors struggle to establish really solidified performance benchmarks for human capital. Now, the SEC requested people to respond to their proposal, and there were essentially two camps that emerged from the public. There was a group in favor of it that believes it would achieve greater transparency, and another group claiming this is redundant and would just cause more investor confusion. And the CCR, or Committee of Corporate Reporting, believes this would largely be negative, as the number one constraint is the 60-day reporting window for the 10K. So trying to include human capital metrics, trying to drive that data into the 10K would be very challenging for a lot of these public companies. They also believe that human capital may have indirect weight on financial performance. So it wouldn't even be necessary to include it in the 10K for investors if it's not really clear how it affects the financial performance of that company. And again, they believe this would cause a great deal of confusion. There's just way too many industries and companies that vary too greatly in reporting their human capital data. This would be similar to using two different accounting systems in the same company. It could cause a lot of confusing data coming out of it. Now, lastly, I guess this is more forward-thinking in the next steps with the SEC's proposal, but largely what is good about this is the principle-based disclosure should be more integral part of financial reporting and what gets reported to the investors. This proposal is really an important first step in opening that dialogue, and big data will play a really big role in driving this forward and be able to analyze and collect human capital data to make it, I guess, useful for investors to make decisions. And lastly, corporations and C-suite personnel should begin, thinking about this and calculating how human capital disclosures to investors will affect their brand, their control information systems, and really other systems that are involved in their companies. But I thank you for your time.